Aloha everyone, welcome back to Frenchies Bakery. Today we are going to be making a stitch cake, if you cannot tell already. Yesterday was actually my birthday and I am obsessed with stitch, so I figured why not make myself a stitch cake. It's perfect. So we're gonna get started by cutting out Stitch's head. I used a 9 by 13 inch pan to make this cake. So we're just gonna trace out his head and then put on the crumb coat and we will chill that in the fridge. Let's get started on cutting out his head. So here's my 9 by 13 inch cake. I used vanilla and put some sprinkles in it just to make it a pretty confetti cake. So whenever we cut into it later on, we're going to have a nice surprise. I am going to look at a picture of Stitch and I'm going to just carve out his head and then the little hair that he has on top. And then I actually have some leftover chocolate cake and I'm just going to cut out his ears so we can have vanilla and chocolate in this cake. You can definitely print out a picture of him and then trace it out, but I'm just gonna do this by looking at a picture of him. For his ears, like I said, I used chocolate, so this is going to be his right ear because there is a little triangle indent there. And then for his left ear, there is a little triangle indent at the top. Once we have the cake all carved out, we are going to start to put on the crumb coat. For the crumb coat, you can use white icing, but I'm just gonna use the blue. So we're gonna very carefully spread this all over to make sure that we won't make the ears move all over the place. So make sure that you are very, very careful when you are spreading out your icing. Now that we have our whole crumb coat on, we are going to pop this in the freezer for about 10 to 15 minutes. Since we have about 10 minutes with nothing to do, I'm going to start to roll out my fondant. I'm going to be doing the eyes and the mouth and the nose out of fondant, and then the rest will be icing. So it's not too much, it's just gonna be for a little bit of a 3D effect. I'm gonna start out with his eyes, so I am going to be using black first. So I'm just going to roll this out. And we're just going to brush off the powdered sugar on the top with a little paintbrush. When you were cutting out Stitch's head with the cake, if you used a printout picture, you can also use it for this step. I am actually going to be using a printout picture for this step just because I want everything to be perfect. So I cut out one of his eyeballs and I'm going to just trace that out. So there's one little eyeball, and then we're going to do the other one. Then I'm going to grab two little white pieces of fondant and I'm going to put them on the tops of the black eyes. This is going to be the little glimmer in his eye. When you stick on the white, you just want to add a drop of water to keep the two pieces of fondant to stick together. I actually did his nose last night just so it had time to dry because it's pretty thick. So I used some white fondant and a drop of blue and a drop of black to make this dark blue color. So that is already dry and ready to go. Now we are going to start on his mouth. So I'm going to cut out his mouth. Here I have some red fondant, which I'm going to be using for the big part of his mouth. We're just gonna roll this out. And then we're going to trace this out. Now that we have that part cut out, we are going to cut out his tongue. I'm actually going to be using a hot pink instead of a darker pink, so his face is going to really pop whenever people look at the cake. So we're gonna roll this out. Tap the end of my paintbrush on the tongue just to give it a little bit more texture, kind of like taste buds. And then we're going to use some more white to make his teeth. Now that we have all of our fondant cut out and our crumb coat has cooled, we are going to start to place our fondant figures on his face and then pipe on his hair. Now with a toothpick, I am going to trace around his eye to make that light blue area. For the rest of the video, I'm going to be using Wilton tip number 32. So I'm going to start to do the light blue area around his eyes, and I'm just going to do a burst of pressure and then pull up. cake is finished. I am so happy with him. He was adorable. I'm ready to dive into this. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye everyone. Have a good rest of your day.